Hello everyone, welcome back to Book Club Preview. I'm Michael, and today we're looking at the Penderwicks At Last, Chapter 11, Pins and Threats. Now, in this chapter, it starts with Jane preparing for the meeting with Mrs. Tifton, and she has this whole plan set out. First, Batty and the dogs are hiding in the greenhouse because Batty is terrified of Miss Tifton and doesn't want to see her. Then Ben and Alice are outside the greenhouse and they're blocking it in case Miss Tifton comes. They will distract her or something. And then inside the house is Jane and Lydia. And the only reason Lydia gets to be there is because the Penderwick family kind of thinks that Mrs. Tifton doesn't hate Lydia. And so maybe Mrs. Tifton thinks Lydia's a little bit better out of all the Penderwicks. So what they do is Lydia and Jane, they start to wait for Mrs. Tifton to come. But Jane starts to get stressed. And so she doesn't want to think about the meeting. And they try to find ways to ease her stress, and they practice by Lydia pretending to be Miss Tifton and Jane trying to talk to her. Doesn't work that well. Talks about Jane talking about her stories, which helps Jane a little bit, but mostly Jane tries to fix Lydia's wedding dress because Jane is making all the wedding dresses. But as Jane is trying to make her dress, her hands are shaking, and she keeps poking Lydia. Well, eventually Miss Tifton arrives, and Jane and Miss Tifton start talking, and Lydia's in there too, talking about things. It gets a little weird, where Mrs. Tifton starts to talk about Jeffrey, and she says, "Oh, maybe Lydia should leave." But Jane says, "No, Lydia can stay. Anything you have to say to me, you can say in front of Lydia." And then Miss Tifton says something about Jeffrey's financial prospects, his money, the future of his money. And so Jane starts to get a little angry, right? And Mrs. Tifton is getting a little more pickled, right? And Lydia has this rating scale: 1 pickle, 2 pickle, 3 pickle, 4 pickle, 5 pickle. And that's Mrs. Tifton is going crazy and angry or whatever. But Mrs. Tifton's pickle meter starts to rise, and Jane's anger meter starts to rise. And Jane starts to go into battle mode, she calls it. And so Jane asked Lydia to go to the bathroom and wait for her. Lydia's in the bathroom. Something happens. Jane comes back into the bathroom and just starts splashing her face full of cold water and getting water everywhere. Lydia finds out that Miss Tifton threatens the Penderwicks and Jeffrey, saying that if Jeffrey were to marry Jane or Skye or any other Penderwick, then she wouldn't give him any more money. And that's a pretty big threat. She would disown him. But Miss Tifton is assuming that Jane or Skye wants to marry Jeffrey, and the only reason they want to marry Jeffrey is for his money. And Jane is just so angry at this. Lydia can't understand it, and so she's kind of asking, well, but Skye doesn't want to marry him. And she's like, yeah. Jane says, yeah. And he's like, and you don't want to marry him? And Jane says, yeah, I don't want to marry him either. And so Lydia's like, well, what's the problem? Who's going to marry him? And, they don't understand why Mrs. Tifton is thinking the way she is. And that is how Chapter 11 ends. Some vocabulary words. Pretentious. This means something that is trying to impress. Okay? So they are preparing for this portentous meeting, okay, where they're trying to clean everything and make it so Miss Tifton feels more welcome or even a little bit impressed. And it comes from the word portent, and this word, it kind of means like something dangerous is going to happen, but it can also mean something is wonderful. And then we can make it a describing word with the OUS, and then it kind of means trying to impress something. The next one is writhing. Alice is pretending to be dead or play dead, and she starts to writhe, kind of shaking uncontrollably, and she's acting like she's dying. The next one is blasé, and this is a French word, which is why the pronunciation is a little bit different. And this means like not important or like you don't care. So Jane and Lydia are trying to act blasé before Mrs. Tifton arrives. So that way it doesn't look like they're worried or that Miss Tifton's so important. They're just like, oh, yeah, we're just making a dress. Oh, Miss Tifton. Oh, I didn't know it was time for you to come already. Come in. Right? So they're trying to give this atmosphere or feeling. And the last one is pandemonium. Pandemonium is just like chaos. So all of these things are being talked about between Jane and Mrs. Tifton, and Lydia's brain starts to get into pandemonium. It starts to go crazy and this chaos, and she can't control it and can't understand things. If you imagine having a lot of little kids together, giving them a lot of cake and sugar, and then telling them they can do whatever they want to do, and then leaving the room, if you came back in 10 minutes, probably it would look like pandemonium. Chaos, everyone just going crazy, doing whatever they want. Well, discussion question. What? Oh, I must not have saved it. Well, what I wanted to ask you, okay, sorry it's not here. If you were Miss Tifton, okay, think about it this way, all right? Not Jane, not Lydia, okay, imagine you're Miss Tifton, okay? And there are some girls that you think want to marry your son just for his money. What would you do? Okay? Now, of course, we know how Jane and Skye feel, and, you know, we know their character and personality. So we know Mrs. Tifton is wrong in this case, right? But imagine you're Miss Tifton, right? What would you do if you were in her place? That's pretty hard to think about, but I want to know what you would do. And of course, please try to write your own question. Write it in the comments so that way other students can look at it and prepare their answers for it also. Well, that's all the time that we have for today. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Book Club Preview. Bye-bye. Hey, if you have any questions about the video today, please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section. If you had any other vocabulary words that you wanted to know what they meant, let me know. And also, if you're interested in maybe joining one of these book clubs, please leave a comment and I'll get back to you. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.